An alien princess who never believed in love is forced to face the impossible when a human proposes. The sky shimmered with colors no human eye could fully appreciate, a spectacle of swirling blues, violets, and golds. Elithra was a jewel of the galaxy, a civilization built on knowledge, precision, and discipline. Its people had conquered disease, war, and even the limits of ordinary physics through careful thought and study. Liara herself was considered the brightest mind in Elithra's royal court. Her intellect, tactical genius, and unmatched strategic sense were renowned across star systems. At 23 standard years, she was already preparing to inherit the throne from her mother, Queen Alara, who ruled with wisdom and caution. For Liara, there had always been a clear path: learn, plan, and execute. Emotions were distractions, and love, as far as she could see, was an unnecessary complication. "Your Highness," said Advisor Talon, bowing as he stepped onto the observation deck. He was an older Elithran with sharp eyes and a mind to match Liara's. "The delegation from Earth has arrived in orbit. They request a formal meeting." Liara turned from the stars, her golden eyes calm and calculating. "Very well, prepare the council chamber. Ensure all protocols are followed. I will not tolerate mistakes, Talon." Talon bowed again and left, leaving Liara alone with her thoughts. She had long known about humans. They were primitive, unpredictable, emotional, but somehow resilient. Their technology lagged behind Elithra's, yet their civilization persisted. She had studied them extensively and found them curious. Curious, yes, but irrelevant to the serious affairs of Elithra. Yet as she walked down the grand halls of the palace, she could not ignore a small flicker of interest, a mild curiosity about what these humans might be like in person. She told herself it was purely for diplomacy, nothing more. The council chamber was vast, filled with Elithra's elegant architecture of light and crystal. When the humans entered, Liara observed them closely. Captain Adrian led the delegation. He was tall for a human, with dark hair and an easy confidence that made him stand out among his peers. His eyes were bright, intelligent, and most notably fearless. Liara regarded him carefully. Humans relied on improvisation, emotion, and intuition, all things Elithrans considered inefficient. Yet Adrian's presence was commanding. He smiled politely, but with an energy Liara could not read. "Princess Liara," Adrian said, bowing slightly, a gesture he had clearly studied. "It is an honor to meet you." "The honor is ours," Liara replied smoothly. Her voice was calm, precise, and deliberately neutral. "I hope your journey was comfortable," Adrian nodded. "As comfortable as it can be traveling through light years of space. But your planet is remarkable. Even our sensors could not capture its full beauty." Liara did not respond immediately. She examined him carefully. Humans spoke in hyperbole, often exaggerating what they saw or felt. Yet she detected sincerity in his words, and that intrigued her. The meeting proceeded with formalities and discussions of trade, technology exchange, and interstellar diplomacy. Adrian impressed the council with his clarity and insight. He asked questions that Liara had not expected, probing Elithran customs, laws, and reasoning with a subtle persistence. She found herself listening more closely than she had to any other visitor, noting how his human perspective offered fresh angles on old problems. When the formal meeting ended, Adrian requested a private audience with Liara. She hesitated. Protocol rarely allowed such exceptions, but curiosity and perhaps a small, reluctant fascination won out. In the quiet of the palace's private chamber, Adrian turned to face her. "Princess, I have a personal request," he began. "It may surprise you." Liara's brow arched slightly. "Proceed, I am listening. I would like to propose something." Adrian's voice was calm, yet steady, carrying a certainty that unsettled Liara. "Not a treaty, not a contract. Something more symbolic." Liara studied him. "Symbolic, elaborate." He took a breath. "I propose a formal alliance, not just between our civilizations, but personally. I wish to offer myself as a partner to you, Princess Liara. In human terms, it is called a proposal." Liara froze. Her mind raced, calculating probabilities, evaluating risks, considering consequences. Every protocol, every advisory council recommendation, every law of Elithra screamed at her that this was impossible, illogical, and reckless. And yet her heart, if she allowed herself to feel it, it might have skipped a beat. "A proposal," she said slowly, testing the sound of the words. "From a human to an Elithran princess?" Adrian nodded. "Yes." I understand if this seems strange, even unacceptable by your standards. But humans value choice, courage, and connection. I do not ask lightly. I ask because I respect you and what you represent. Liara's mind flitted between scenarios. Accepting the proposal could destabilize interstellar relations. Her advisors would call it a breach of protocol. Yet rejecting it might offend the humans in ways she could not predict. She remained silent, her thoughts swirling like a storm behind her calm exterior. Adrian's eyes were steady, unyielding, yet patient. There was no rush, no demand, only a quiet conviction that unsettled her more than she expected. Finally, she spoke. Your proposal is illogical in the context of Elethran law and tradition. It cannot be accepted under normal circumstances. I understand, Adrian replied evenly. But Princess, I also understand that Elethra is not just law, it is also vision. You lead not just with rules, but with insight. That insight, your ability to see the greater good, might allow you to consider possibilities others cannot. Liara paused. No one had ever addressed her like that. They had not spoken to her as a person with her own mind, only as a princess to be guided. Adrian's words challenged her authority, yet respected it. That contradiction was fascinating. She rose and walked to the window, looking at the stars again. Humans, you are unpredictable, she said quietly. Yet somehow resilient. It is curious. Adrian's lips curved slightly in a smile. We do not always follow logic. Sometimes we follow something we cannot explain, but it gives us strength. It is what allows us to survive, even thrive against impossible odds. Liara's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. And you call this love? In part, Adrian admitted. But it is also trust, respect, courage, and hope. All of these combined are what I offer you, Princess, not just an alliance, but a chance to explore something greater than ourselves. The words hung in the air. Liara's mind raced through centuries of Elethran history, rules, and the weight of expectation. Nothing in her life had prepared her for this. And yet, as impossible as it seemed, there was a flicker inside her, a tiny spark of curiosity, of wonder. Very well, she said at last, her voice firm. I will consider your proposal, not now, not publicly, but privately. You have my attention, human. Adrian bowed slightly, a gesture of respect and patience. That is all I ask, Princess. Time is all we need. The hours after his departure were filled with restless thought. Liara walked through the palace gardens, the familiar paths and plants now seeming different. She remembered her mother's words, duty first. Emotions are secondary. Yet for the first time, Liara questioned whether a strictly logical life was enough. Humans had something Elethrans rarely possessed, unpredictability, courage, and a willingness to embrace the unknown. And perhaps, just perhaps, there was value in that. As night fell on Elethra, Liara returned to her chamber. She sat before her reflection, the stars reflected in her golden eyes. She had faced countless challenges, conquered countless dilemmas, and yet this, the notion of human connection, felt impossible. Impossible. And yet, for the first time, she found herself wondering, what if impossible was worth exploring? And so the seed was planted. The princess who never believed in love had been given a choice. A choice not dictated by law, not dictated by duty, but by curiosity, courage, and the spark of something wholly human. And somewhere in the galaxy, a human captain waited, trusting that the impossible could be made possible. Princess Liara sat alone in the royal library, surrounded by towering shelves filled with records of Elethra's history, law, and strategy. The room smelled faintly of polished crystal and ozone, a scent she associated with focus and clarity. Yet today, clarity eluded her. Her thoughts returned again and again to Captain Adrian's proposal. She had expected to dismiss it immediately. Humans were emotional, unpredictable, and most dangerously persistent. Elethran law and tradition allowed no room for such personal entanglements with other species. And yet something in his words lingered. Something she could not quantify, something she could not categorize. He had spoken of courage, of trust, of hope. He had not demanded, not pressured. He had simply offered. Liara's fingers traced the smooth edge of a historical tome, her mind running scenarios. Accepting the proposal could risk Elethra's political stability. There would be outrage among the advisors, and factions could form against her. Yet rejecting it outright could offend humans, alienating a species with whom diplomacy and cooperation might prove invaluable. Talon, her closest advisor, entered quietly. His usual calm was tempered with caution. "Your Highness," he said. I have received reports from the Council. Some advisors are concerned about the human proposal. They view it as a breach of protocol and potentially dangerous. Liara nodded without looking up. I expected as much, yet I have not made a decision. I intend to consider all factors, political, cultural, and personal, before responding. Talon's eyes flickered with concern. Your Highness, personal considerations have no place in leadership. You must act in the best interest of Elithra. I am aware, Liara replied, her voice firm, and yet perhaps Elithra's best interest is not always logical in the strictest sense. Talon paused, clearly unsure whether to argue further. He respected Liara's intellect, yet he worried about her willingness to entertain what he considered an impossible notion. Very well, he said finally. If you insist on exploring this human perspective, perhaps observing them directly will aid your judgment. Captain Adrian and his delegation remain in orbit. You may learn from them. Liara considered this. Observation would be logical. She would monitor the humans' behavior, analyze their decisions, and determine whether their methods had any value. Not emotion, value. The following days were a careful study of human behavior. Liara attended meetings, negotiations, and simulations where humans demonstrated problem-solving in real time. She observed Adrian particularly closely. He approached challenges differently than any Elithran strategist. Where her people relied on precise calculation and predictive algorithms, Adrian trusted intuition and adaptability. During a simulated crisis, the ship's communication system malfunctioned, leaving the humans unable to coordinate through their usual channels. Elithran officers immediately panicked, calculating probabilities and assessing failure points. Adrian, however, remained calm. He directed the humans to improvise, using limited resources to communicate through coded light signals and makeshift instruments. Liara watched silently, her mind analyzing each step. And then, unexpectedly, a feeling she had never named before stirred within her: admiration. Human creativity, risk-taking, and adaptability, they worked. Against odds, against uncertainty, they succeeded. But she reminded herself firmly that admiration did not equate to emotional attachment. She was observing, not participating. She would not allow herself to be distracted. Later, in the quiet of the observation deck, Liara confronted Adrian. "Captain," she began, her tone precise, "you demonstrated unconventional problem-solving today. The results were effective, yet I must understand your reasoning. Humans often act in ways Elithrans consider inefficient." Adrian smiled faintly, as if he had expected this question. "Efficiency is important, Princess, but adaptability is stronger. Logic alone cannot account for every variable, especially in unpredictable situations. Humans thrive because we are willing to take calculated risks and trust each other, even when logic suggests otherwise." Liara considered this. "Trust, that is what you value more than calculation." "It is part of it," Adrian replied. "Trust, courage, hope, and cooperation. When combined with skill and knowledge, these qualities allow humans to survive challenges that might overwhelm a purely logical approach." Liara's eyes narrowed. "And your proposal offered these qualities to me personally?" Adrian's gaze was steady. "Yes, Princess. I do not offer simply affection or emotion. I offer partnership, understanding, and commitment. All of these can be strengths, even in leadership. Logic alone cannot guide a civilization. Sometimes it is the human heart that provides the solution." Liara turned away, walking along the edge of the deck. The stars stretched endlessly before her. Every thought she had about humans was being challenged. The more she studied them, the more she realized they were not as primitive as she had assumed. They were different. And different did not mean weaker. That evening, a minor crisis erupted on Elithra. A neighboring asteroid belt had shifted, threatening one of the planet's orbital mining stations. Traditional Elithran protocols dictated a precise, methodical evacuation, calculated down to the millisecond. Yet the asteroid's movement was unpredictable, and any miscalculation could endanger hundreds of lives. Liara was summoned to the Emergency Command Center. Adrian had also been invited to advise, though the council expressed clear skepticism about human judgment. "Princess," one advisor said, "the human may suggest improvisation. It is dangerous." Liara's mind was already racing. She looked at Adrian. "Captain, what do you propose?" Adrian quickly assessed the situation, speaking calmly. "We cannot rely solely on predicted trajectories. I suggest deploying both automated defenses and human teams to monitor and react in real time. We create redundant systems, but we also empower people to act if circumstances change. Liara analyzed the plan. It was unorthodox. It relied on humans making decisions on the fly, which Elithrans typically avoided. And yet it accounted for unpredictability, something logic alone could not. "Very well," she said. "Implement your strategy, Captain. I will oversee coordination with Elithran forces." The operation began. Humans and Elithrans worked side by side, monitoring the asteroid's movement. Moments of tension arose, but Adrian's leadership guided the teams effectively. Liara observed every detail, her mind taking notes, calculating outcomes, and noting where intuition complemented precision. When the asteroid passed safely, no lives lost and minimal damage to the station, Liara felt an unfamiliar emotion, relief mixed with admiration. She turned to Adrian. "You were correct. Logic alone would have failed. Human adaptability has value." Adrian's expression remained calm but approving. "I am glad you recognize it, Princess. Humans are not perfect, but our strengths often come from qualities you might consider unpredictable." Liara's mind turned inward. Could it be that human unpredictability, human courage, even human emotion could be integrated with Elithran precision? Could it be a strength rather than a weakness? In the days that followed, Liara continued her private observations. She noticed small things about Adrian, the way he listened, not just hearing but understanding, the way he encouraged others, the subtle humor he used to ease tension. Humans relied on connection, empathy, and trust, qualities Elithrans often dismissed. Liara found herself thinking of him unexpectedly. A thought, fleeting and unsettling, entered her mind. What if she allowed herself to feel these human qualities? What if she allowed trust, courage, or connection into her life? She immediately scolded herself. It was dangerous. She was a princess, heir to Elithra's throne. Her duty was to logic, to her people, and to tradition. Yet, try as she might, she could not completely dismiss the possibility. One night, in the privacy of her chamber, she spoke aloud to no one. "Is it possible that humans could teach us something valuable, something beyond calculation?" The silence of the room answered her nothing. Yet within her, a tiny spark of curiosity flickered, refusing to be extinguished. The following week, Elithra's advisors gathered to discuss the human proposal. Voices rose, arguments flared, and tradition clashed with curiosity. Liara listened, her expression calm, yet her mind worked furiously. Talon spoke on her behalf. "Your Highness, humans are unpredictable. Their customs are not our own. They may offer ideas, but they cannot replace the foundations of Elithra." Another advisor interjected. "Allowing such a proposal could destabilize our alliances. We cannot permit personal whims to influence governance." Liara raised a hand, and the room fell silent. "I hear your concerns. They are valid, yet Elithra has thrived because we are not static. We evolve, we adapt. And sometimes the greatest strength comes from sources we do not yet understand." A murmur ran through the council. Liara's words were not traditional. They carried a hint of something new, a spark of change. She turned her attention to Adrian, who had quietly observed the discussion. His calm demeanor and patient presence had clearly unsettled some council members. Liara realized that humans' ability to remain steady under pressure was remarkable. After the council adjourned, she approached Adrian privately. "Captain, I have made no decision regarding your proposal," she said, "but I am willing to continue observing, learning, and perhaps understanding." Adrian bowed slightly. "That is all I ask, Princess. Time and patience are sufficient. Nothing is required beyond your willingness to see possibilities." Liara's lips curved in the smallest hint of a smile. She did not fully understand what she was feeling, curiosity, caution, something else entirely. But she knew this. The human captain had planted a seed that could grow into understanding, partnership, or something beyond her comprehension. And for the first time, Liara felt that the impossible might be worth considering. The stars stretched endlessly beyond the viewport of Elithra's flagship, glimmering like scattered jewels on a dark velvet cloth. Princess Liara sat in the command chair, her fingers resting lightly on the controls, her golden eyes scanning data streams and holographic displays. Beside her, Captain Adrian stood, quietly observing the same screens, his stance relaxed yet attentive. They were on a mission together, one that tested not only their skills but their ability to trust one another. A rogue alien faction, the Voral, had destabilized trade routes in a nearby star system, threatening both Elithrin and human colonies. The mission was to negotiate peace, or, failing that, prevent escalation into war. Liara's mind raced through tactical possibilities, calculating every possible outcome. Her training urged caution, precision, and strict adherence to protocol. Adrian, on the other hand, suggested approaches that defied Elithrin norms. He valued dialogue over force, intuition over rigid plans. "You see," Adrian said quietly, pointing to the holographic display of the Voral fleet, "if we attempt the standard approach, sending our negotiators with strict protections, they may perceive it as aggression. We need to show trust first, then assert strength if necessary." Liara considered his suggestion carefully. It was risky. Elithrin protocol dictated clear boundaries: maintain power, avoid exposure. Yet she had learned in the past weeks that human unpredictability often carried a strength Elithrins could not anticipate. "Very well," she said finally. "We will follow your plan, but we prepare contingency measures. If they betray our trust, we respond immediately." Adrian nodded. "Agreed. Trust, yes, but not recklessness." The ship dropped into orbit above Voral space. The alien planet below was rugged, scarred by past conflicts, its cities a patchwork of technology and remnants of war. As they approached the designated meeting site, Liara noted the tension among her officers. Humans' willingness to take calculated risks unnerved them. When the Voral representatives appeared on the viewing screen, Liara felt the weight of expectation pressing on her. Every word, every gesture mattered. These aliens were cunning, proud, and wary of outsiders. Any misstep could trigger violence. Adrian stepped forward, speaking calmly but with confidence. "We come with respect and with a willingness to cooperate. Elithra and Earth seek peaceful resolution." Liara watched the Voral closely. Their initial reaction was cautious suspicion. Their eyes flickered to the humans, then to her, then back again. The conversation was tense, measured like a dance with hidden dangers. At one point, a Voral officer challenged Adrian directly, questioning the humans' ability to negotiate. "Why should we trust you?" the alien demanded, its tone sharp. Adrian's response was simple, yet sincere. "Because we are willing to listen, learn, and act with fairness. We cannot promise perfection, but we can promise honesty and effort." Liara was struck by the simplicity of his words. No threats, no displays of power, just transparency. She realized that humans' approach, their courage in offering vulnerability, often disarmed others more effectively than rigid strategy. Days passed in negotiations. Liara and Adrian worked together, navigating subtle politics, cultural misunderstandings, and sudden flare-ups of tension. The Voral tested their patience, setting traps, proposing contradictory terms, and attempting to divide them. Liara noticed something surprising. Adrian never faltered. When Elithran officers became frustrated or anxious, he remained steady. His calm inspired the humans around him, and gradually, even some Elithran officers began to see value in his methods. During one particularly tense session, the Voral proposed an abrupt test of loyalty. They demanded that Elithra and Earth send a small team to repair a critical satellite in the heart of a meteor field, a dangerous area filled with unpredictable debris. Elithran advisors objected immediately. The risks were unacceptable. Protocol dictated that Elithran ships avoid such hazards at all costs. Yet Adrian turned to Liara. "Princess," he said, "if we refuse, they will see it as weakness or dishonesty. If we accept, we demonstrate trust and capability. It is dangerous, yes, but calculated risk is sometimes necessary." Liara considered the options. The humans were willing to take action where Elithrans hesitated. Could she allow herself to embrace this strategy? Could she trust humans and their judgment? "Yes," she said finally, "we will do it, but we proceed with full preparation, contingencies in place." The repair mission was perilous. The small ship carrying the team dodged tumbling asteroids, energy discharges, and sudden gravitational anomalies. Liara monitored every maneuver, her hands moving across controls with precision. Beside her, Adrian coordinated the human crew, encouraging calm and creativity. At one point, a meteor larger than expected veered dangerously close. Automated Elithran systems calculated an inevitable collision. Adrian, however, trusted the human pilot's instincts. "Move with it, not against it," he instructed. Use its momentum to your advantage. Liara's breath caught. It defied every calculation she had made. And yet, as the pilots followed his direction, the ship passed safely, sliding past the meteor like a stone skipping across water. She felt a strange emotion welling up inside her, admiration, relief, and something deeper, harder to name. Humans relied on trust, intuition, and courage. Elithrans relied on rules and certainty. And now Liara realized both were necessary. When the mission concluded successfully, the Voral representatives were visibly impressed. The combination of Elithran precision and human creativity had solved a problem that neither species could have handled alone. "You work well together," a Voral elder said regarding Liara and Adrian. "Perhaps there is wisdom in this union of strengths." Liara met Adrian's eyes. His calm, steady gaze reminded her that humans were not only capable of courage, but also of loyalty, empathy, and trust. She realized that her growing respect for humans had evolved into something more complex. Later, in private, she confronted her feelings. "Captain Adrian," she began cautiously, "I am beginning to understand something I have never allowed myself to consider. Humans, your qualities, they are valuable, perhaps even necessary." Adrian's expression remained gentle. "Princess, it is not only acceptable to consider these things, it is wise. Knowledge and strategy are important, but courage, connection, and empathy often guide decisions when logic alone cannot." Liara nodded slowly. "And my proposal, your offer, I cannot ignore it any longer. It challenges everything I have believed. Yet perhaps it is not folly to explore." The days that followed tested them further. A Voral strike force attempted a surprise attack on a neutral station. The humans and Elithrans had to respond immediately. Liara, for the first time, relied not only on her calculations, but on Adrian's instincts and judgment. Together, they coordinated defenses, redirecting ships, neutralizing threats, and evacuating civilians. At the height of the crisis, a sudden explosion rocked the command ship. Liara's station trembled, warning lights flashing. A young human officer was trapped in a corridor, debris blocking his path. Without hesitation, Adrian rushed into the danger, directing human teams to clear a path. Liara, initially frozen by protocol, followed instinctively. Together, they guided the officer to safety, their actions synchronized despite the chaos. After the danger passed, Liara's heart still raced. She had never acted with such immediacy without calculating every outcome first. And yet, in that moment, she had acted with trust, courage, and reliance on another being. She realized then that human strength was not only in their ingenuity, but in their willingness to act despite uncertainty. And more unsettlingly, she found herself drawn to that courage, to the very human quality she had dismissed for so long. That night, as the stars shimmered above Elithra, Liara sat in silence with Adrian. Words were unnecessary. Their shared experiences had conveyed more than any discussion could. "Princess," Adrian said quietly, "you are learning something valuable. It is not weakness to feel, to trust, or to act without certainty. It is a strength." Liara's eyes met his. "Strength, yes. Perhaps I have underestimated it. Humans, they teach lessons even in the simplest acts." Adrian nodded. "And sometimes the most important lessons are learned in partnership." Liara's mind lingered on the word partnership. It was both terrifying and exhilarating. She had spent her life relying on intellect, strategy, and careful calculation. Now she wondered if the human qualities she had witnessed, courage, empathy, trust, could be integrated into her life, into her leadership, and perhaps into her heart. The mission concluded successfully. The Voral agreed to negotiate lasting peace, impressed by the combined leadership of Liara and Adrian. Elithran officers began to see the value in human methods, and humans gained respect for Elithran precision. Liara, however, returned to her private chambers with a mind and heart full of questions. She had faced danger, uncertainty, and the impossible. And she had learned that humans, Adrian in particular, offered qualities that could not be measured, predicted, or controlled. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a future where trust, courage, and connection were as important as logic and strategy. A future where humans and Elithrans could not only cooperate, but learn from one another. And in that imagining, the spark of something new, something impossible, grew steadily. The princess who had never believed in love now found herself facing an even greater challenge. Understanding it. The Elithran sky shimmered with streaks of aurora-like energy, as Princess Liara walked along the balcony of the royal palace. The events of recent weeks had shifted something deep within her. She had witnessed human courage, creativity, and trust in action. She had survived dangers she could never have imagined, thanks to Captain Adrian and his unique perspective. And now she faced a question she had never allowed herself to ask. Could she allow these human qualities, perhaps even Adrian himself, into her life? Her mind traced the chain of events. The rogue Voral had been neutralized, negotiations concluded, and Elithra was safer because humans and Elithrans had worked together. And yet, the true challenge was not external, it was internal. Liara had spent her life relying on logic, precision, and discipline. Emotion had always been an inconvenience, a distraction, but now she felt something entirely new stirring. "You are deep in thought, Princess," a calm voice said behind her. Liara turned to see Adrian approaching. His expression was relaxed, but his eyes held their familiar steadiness, the same presence that had guided her through so many crises. "Captain," she said, inclining her head. "I am considering many things." Adrian nodded. "You have every right. These decisions are not simple. They affect not only you but your people and the relationships between civilizations." Liara studied him. "Your perspective has proven valuable. I am beginning to see that human qualities, courage, trust, adaptability, can complement logic. Yet I still question how to reconcile them with my responsibilities." Adrian smiled faintly. "Leadership is not only about rules or calculations. It is also about judgment, empathy, and understanding. Sometimes the greatest leaders are those willing to embrace the unknown." Liara reflected on that. Embracing the unknown had always been terrifying, but recent events had taught her that it could also be rewarding. The following days brought new challenges. A distant star system had reported unusual activity, an unstable asteroid belt drifting toward inhabited colonies. Elithra had the technology to intervene, but the situation required more than raw calculation. Quick decisions and on-the-ground problem-solving were essential. Liara was chosen to lead the mission, with Adrian as her partner. Together, they assembled a mixed crew of Elithran and human officers. The two species had learned to respect one another's strengths, humans for their courage and intuition, Elithrans for their precision and foresight. As the mission commenced, Liara observed her crew carefully. Humans adapted quickly, improvising solutions to unexpected problems. Elithrans relied on careful calculations, double-checking every move. The combination worked. Each group complemented the other, and under Liara and Adrian's leadership, progress was swift. During one critical operation, a section of the asteroid field shifted unpredictably, threatening the fragile stations of colonists nearby. Automated systems suggested a specific course of action, but Adrian proposed something daring, to guide the asteroid's momentum rather than avoid it. Liara's mind raced. The plan defied calculation, but she remembered lessons learned during previous missions. Humans' instincts could often succeed where logic faltered. "Very well," she said, her voice steady. "We proceed with your method, prepare contingencies if it fails." The maneuver was tense. The asteroid moved, guided by the team's combined efforts. Lives were saved, stations remained intact, and the crew celebrated their success. Liara allowed herself a small smile. Human ingenuity had once again proven invaluable. Later, as the crew rested, Liara and Adrian walked together through the command deck. The conversation was quiet, yet their words carried meaning beyond diplomacy. "Princess," Adrian said, "you have faced the unknown before. You have made choices that were risky yet necessary. You have grown as a leader and as a person." Liara hesitated. "I have learned that courage, trust, and connection are strengths. But I still wonder, how can these qualities coexist with my responsibilities to Elithra? How can I reconcile my duty with my feelings?" Adrian's eyes softened. "By realizing that responsibility and connection are not opposites, they strengthen each other. A leader who understands both logic and emotion guides more effectively, and sometimes the heart can teach what calculation cannot." Liara considered this. She had always viewed emotion as a weakness, but now she understood it differently. Trust, empathy, and courage were tools as powerful as any weapon or algorithm. They could inspire loyalty, cooperation, and innovation. "And personal connection?" she asked cautiously. "Is it wise to allow that into my life?" Adrian smiled gently. "Wisdom is not only about caution, It is about balance. You can honor your duties and still embrace connection. Courage, after all, is required in both realms. Liara felt a warmth she had never experienced before. She realized she was not afraid of connection, not entirely. Perhaps with guidance and patience it could coexist with logic and duty. The mission's next challenge arrived suddenly. A rogue faction opposed to Elithra's influence attacked a human colony in the border system. Communication was minimal, and response time was critical. Liara and Adrian coordinated the rescue, blending Elithran precision with human improvisation. During the operation, Liara's ship was caught in a gravity well. Sensors predicted near-certain destruction. Every Elithran officer hesitated, calculating probabilities and debating options. Liara, however, relied on both her instincts and Adrian's guidance. "Trust your crew," she instructed. "Adapt with the situation. Calculations are insufficient alone." The maneuver was daring. Ships moved with precise timing, yet human pilots adapted to unexpected debris and changes. The gravity well was neutralized, and the colony remained safe. Liara felt an exhilaration unlike anything she had experienced. Fear had been present, but so had courage, and the result was success. After the operation, as they returned to Elithra, Liara reflected on the events. Humans acted with risk and trust, yet achieved outcomes that Elithran calculation alone might not have. She realized she had underestimated the value of unpredictability and the power of connection. Back on Elithra, news of their mission spread quickly. Humans and Elithrans celebrated together. Officers began to adopt combined strategies, blending logic and intuition. Even the most skeptical advisors acknowledged the benefit of integrating human methods. Liara received a private message from her mother, Queen Alara. "You have grown, my daughter. Leadership is not only calculation, it is courage, empathy, and judgment. Humans have shown you what we cannot always teach. Trust yourself as you have learned to trust them." Liara smiled softly. She had faced dangers, uncertainty, and her own fears, and emerged wiser. Yet one challenge remained, her own feelings. The proposal Adrian had offered weeks ago still hung in her mind, now heavier with meaning. That evening, she found herself alone in the palace gardens, walking among crystalline plants that shimmered under Elithra's twin moons. The stars above mirrored the shimmer of the plants below, creating a landscape of light and reflection. Adrian joined her quietly, offering no words at first, only presence. Finally, Liara spoke. "Captain, I cannot deny the change you have inspired. You have shown me courage, trust, and perspective beyond what I imagined, and I find myself questioning beliefs I have held all my life." Adrian turned to her. "And that is good, Princess. Questioning allows growth. You do not have to decide immediately. Understanding takes time." Liara shook her head gently. "It is more than understanding. I feel something I cannot define. Curiosity, admiration, perhaps connection, and I fear what it may mean for my duties, my responsibilities, and my heart." Adrian smiled, softly reassuring. "Courage is required here, too, not only in leadership but in allowing yourself to feel, to trust, and to explore possibilities. You are stronger than you realize, Princess." Liara's chest tightened. The words resonated deeply. She realized she had been wrong to fear human qualities as weaknesses. They were strengths, sometimes unpredictable, sometimes unfamiliar, but they offered growth, perspective, and resilience. She took a deep breath, looking at Adrian. "Then we move forward together. Carefully, wisely, but together." Adrian inclined his head. "Together," he agreed. In the following weeks, Elithra witnessed unprecedented cooperation. Humans and Elithrans worked side by side on joint projects, blending technology, intuition, and strategy. Liara's leadership reflected the lessons she had learned: balance between logic and courage, discipline and adaptability, duty and connection. Liara herself changed. She had learned to trust not only her advisors but her own instincts and judgment. She had begun to embrace emotions, understanding them not as weaknesses but as strengths. And perhaps, most importantly, she had allowed herself to consider the possibility of love, not as a distraction, but as a force that could guide, inspire, and strengthen. As she stood once more on the balcony, gazing at the stars, Liara felt a sense of calm determination. The impossible, love, trust, connection, was no longer something to fear. It was a challenge, yes, but also a gift she could explore without abandoning logic or duty. And somewhere nearby, Captain Adrian watched the same stars. confident that the journey they had begun together was only just unfolding. The princess who had once rejected love now faced it with courage, wisdom, and a heart ready to embrace the unknown. The palace of Elithra gleamed under the soft light of twin moons. Crystalline spires reached toward the sky, reflecting 1,000 colors in the calm night. Within its grand halls, Princess Liara prepared for a decision that would not only define her life but shape the future of her civilization. For weeks, she had wrestled with the impossible, the human proposal from Captain Adrian. She had observed, studied, and reflected. She had learned that human qualities, courage, adaptability, empathy, and trust, were not weaknesses but strengths. She had seen humans and Elithrans work together to prevent disasters, save lives, and negotiate peace in ways no single species could have achieved alone. And she had discovered something more personal, connection, trust, and admiration that went beyond logic. Liara stood in front of a polished, reflective wall, her golden eyes fixed on her own reflection. She had always believed that her duty, her logic, and her training defined her, but she now understood that leadership and life required balance. Wisdom alone was not enough. Courage, empathy, and trust had their place, even in the governance of a powerful civilization. Her thoughts were interrupted by the soft presence of Adrian. He entered the chamber quietly, as he always did, exuding calm and confidence. "Princess," he said, his voice gentle, "are you ready?" Liara turned to him, her expression steady but thoughtful. "I am." "The decision is mine, not only for me but for Elithra." Adrian inclined his head respectfully. "Whatever you decide, Princess, it will be the right choice if it comes from your heart." Liara smiled faintly, a mixture of gratitude and resolve. "Then we proceed together." The next day, the council convened in the Grand Hall. Elithran advisors, diplomats, and representatives of other allied species gathered to hear Liara's announcement. Whispers and murmurs filled the room. Many were uncertain, skeptical, or curious about the princess's intentions. Liara stepped forward, her posture confident, her presence commanding. Every eye turned toward her. For a moment, silence reigned, and she allowed herself a brief breath. "Honored advisors, representatives, and citizens of Elithra," she began, her voice clear and resonant. "We stand at a moment of opportunity. Our civilization has always valued logic, precision, and strategy. These qualities have brought us strength and prosperity. Yet the events of recent weeks have shown me another truth: courage, trust, and cooperation are equally vital. They are not weaknesses, they are strengths." A ripple of surprise moved through the hall. Some faces reflected skepticism, others intrigue. Liara continued, "We have worked alongside humans in times of challenge and crisis. Their perspectives, their bravery, and their willingness to act beyond strict calculation have strengthened Elithra. It is my belief that by embracing these qualities, we can ensure a brighter future for our civilization." She paused, letting the words sink in. Then she spoke the words that had weighed heavily on her heart. "I have also considered a personal matter, one that carries significance not only for me but for Elithra. Captain Adrian of Earth has offered partnership in the form of a proposal. After careful reflection, I have chosen to accept it, not solely as an act of personal connection, but as a symbol of cooperation, trust, and unity between our peoples." A murmur of astonishment spread throughout the hall. Some advisors exchanged glances of shock. Others, inspired by her courage, nodded slowly. Liara met their eyes with calm authority. "This partnership," she continued, "represents more than an alliance between two species. It represents the courage to embrace the unknown, the trust to work together, and the wisdom to recognize that connection strengthens even the most disciplined mind. Elithra will enter a new era of cooperation, guided not only by logic but also by courage and empathy." Adrian stepped forward, bowing respectfully before Liara, then straightening to address the council. "Honored representatives, I am humbled by Princess Liara's decision. Humans value trust, courage, and connection, and we pledge to work alongside Elithra with respect and integrity. Together, we will face challenges, learn from one another, and build a stronger future." The hall erupted in applause. Some Elithrans still looked uncertain, but most felt the inspiration in Liara's words. The union of Elithran precision and human courage had already proven its strength. Now, it was a symbol for all to see. Liara felt a wave of relief and satisfaction. The impossible had been achieved, and it was not only a political victory, it was personal growth, a recognition that the heart and mind could work together. In the days that followed, preparations began for the formal ceremony. Humans and Elythrans collaborated on its design, combining cultural traditions with innovation. Crystalline lights intertwined with holographic projections, creating an atmosphere of wonder. Liara spent time with Adrian in private moments, discussing strategy, philosophy, and the small joys of life. Their conversations were filled with curiosity, laughter, and the quiet confidence of mutual respect. Liara realized that connection did not weaken her. It strengthened her resolve, her leadership, and her understanding of the universe. During one evening walk on the palace terraces, Liara reflected on her journey. She had once believed love and human unpredictability were distractions, obstacles to reason. Now she understood they were lessons, teaching her courage, empathy, and the value of trust. Adrian stood beside her quietly, watching the stars shimmer over Elythra. "Princess," he said softly, "you have grown beyond even your own expectations, and you inspire those around you. You have shown that courage, connection, and logic can coexist." Liara smiled. "And I have learned that the impossible is sometimes worth embracing." The day of the ceremony arrived. Citizens gathered in Elythra's central plaza, a breathtaking expanse of crystal and light. Humans and Elythrans alike watched as Princess Liara entered with dignity, followed by Adrian. The assembly was silent, attentive, and filled with anticipation. Liara approached the ceremonial platform, her posture calm and commanding. She turned to Adrian, who nodded reassuringly. Together they faced the crowd. Liara raised her hand, signaling for silence. "Today, we celebrate not only partnership between two individuals, but also unity between our civilizations. Elythra has learned that courage, trust, and cooperation are as vital as logic and strategy. Humans and Elythrans will work together, learn from one another, and grow stronger through connection." Adrian stepped forward. "And together, we pledge to explore this path with respect, integrity, and courage. We will face challenges, discover solutions, and inspire others through our example." The citizens erupted in applause, cheers, and celebration. Elythra had embraced the unknown, and the future looked brighter than ever. In the following weeks, joint projects flourished. Humans shared knowledge of creative problem-solving, while Elythrans offered precise calculations and advanced technology. The collaboration inspired innovations across both civilizations, from energy solutions to medical advancements. Liara herself thrived. She had learned to balance her intellect with her emotions, her duty with connection. She faced each challenge with courage, knowing she had a partner she could trust, both in leadership and in life. One evening, she and Adrian walked through the palace gardens, their hands brushing together. Liara looked up at the twin moons. "Captain," she said softly, "I once believed that love and connection were distractions. Now I understand they are strengths." Adrian smiled. "And Elythra is stronger because of it, Princess." Liara nodded, feeling a sense of peace she had never known. "Yes, we have grown together, learned together, and faced the impossible, and I would do it again without hesitation." The palace shimmered in the moonlight, the stars reflected in crystalline structures. Elythra had entered a new era, not just of cooperation, but of understanding, courage, and hope. Humans and Elythrans would continue to face challenges, explore the unknown, and learn from one another. And for Liara, the impossible had become possible, not only in leadership but in her heart. She had embraced trust, courage, and connection. She had embraced love, partnership, and the unknown. Standing beside Adrian, she looked toward the horizon, confident in the journey ahead. Elythra would thrive, guided by wisdom, heart, and courage. Humans had taught them a vital lesson. The strength of the heart could never be measured, yet it could change the course of civilizations. As the twin moons reflected on the crystalline towers of Elythra, Liara and Adrian walked forward together, partners in leadership, in life, and in the extraordinary adventure of the universe. The dawn of a new era had arrived.